This week on OSRL. We apply the first layer of protective coating to our straw bale walls. And this layer contains a very special ingredient that will ensure our walls last for a long time.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're new here, my wife and I were building our own home off-grid here in the Arizona desert. But if you caught our last video, you know we got a good start on applying our slip coat to our straw bales. This is the first coat that will go over the straw bales that will enable us to protect our walls. So obviously we got a good start, but we got a long way to go. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to get the rest of these walls covered. Now, before we get started, if you could do me a favor, give this video a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because you got to see how this all turns out. Now I'm going to get to work. Why don't you come along, and I'll show you what we're doing today. Pardon me. How's that look? Is that a fine load? I got a whole bunch of dirt sifted, ready to go. Nice looking pile of dirt, I'll tell you that much. And I know my piles of dirt, but I'm all set, ready to rock and roll, and ready to do some mudding tomorrow. All right, good morning. It's bright and early. I'm ready to get into the clay slip. Now, if you caught that last video, you know I was using this mixer to do that clay slip. But the clay slip is very sticky stuff. You know, I mixed it, and it's just all along the sides of the mixer. I really don't feel it's super efficient to do it that way. So I'm actually going to go and just try and do it by hand right in this bin. Just maybe use a hoe and just kind of mix it up. That way I'm not losing any of the clay slip. That way I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time scraping off the sides of the mixer. It'll all be right there. So I'm going to take those mixes, get it to the north side of the house, and just try and get that whole outside of the north wall done. Meanwhile, Jess is going to be out here in a little bit, and what she's going to be doing is kind of going behind me, and the areas that have the clay slip, she's going to start doing cob. That's the second layer. So we'll just kind of be doing this in tandem. Very nice. Well, I must admit, I was a little skeptical when Jess brought up making the clay slip by hand, but it actually worked pretty fast, and no need to scrape it out of the mixer. So yeah, I'd say that's a winner. That probably made this clay slip a lot faster than the mixer. So let's get to putting this on the bales.
I'd say clay is going to be the secret ingredient here for really protecting these walls.
Shh, it's the secret ingredient. Why is clay the magical ingredient out here?
When you get into the research and kind of the science behind clay, its molecular structure, and kind of some of the chemistry, it's kind of interesting.
Okay, we're talking science and chemistry here, so please don't click away.
I was reading an article recently about how researchers found this log that had been buried in this clay-rich soil, and this log was almost 4,000 years old, and it was barely degraded at all. And that was mainly due to the clay in the soil. The article was talking about a possible way of sequestering carbon by burying wood. But I mean, you can apply it to building as well. Like if you cover the walls with the clay, it can preserve those walls for a long time.
Okay, so I've been working on this wall all day, and I'm kind of halfway there, making some really good progress. Still have a ways to go, but it's coming along pretty nice. Now you probably noticed I was using the trowel pretty much most of the day, and I'll kind of get into my thoughts on that here in a bit. But obviously I'll be out here again tomorrow, and we're going to try and knock the rest of this out, then, then get to the inside. Whew. The bales were the easy part. Now's the hard part, covering the bales. Meanwhile, Jess has been working in this corner. As you can see, she's doing an excellent job just kind of sealing the area between the bales and the dome. I think that's looking fantastic. Keeping an eye on things up there, huh? Keeping an eye on things?
So the way that clay works on a molecular level, the minerals sort of form these layers of, they're kind of plate-like, and they're stacked on each other, and it creates this electrostatic charge that actually attracts water into those spaces. That's why clay is considered to be hydrophilic, because it absorbs moisture pretty readily. But the interesting thing is, when the water fills those spaces between the molecules, the clay expands, and then it actually kind of seals itself, and it doesn't allow any more water in. So that's why sometimes people will seal like the bottom of a pond with clay, because that expands and it prevents the water from, seeping in down into the ground. So when it comes to like a wall, clay is really good for humid environments where it might absorb that moisture, but then, it kind of locks it and prevents it from wicking through the entire layer and, getting the wall itself wet. And then, the water can then evaporate again when the air is dry.
Obviously, you might want something a little bit more waterproof if you're living in a place with a lot of rain.
Yeah, well, even us, for the exterior walls, we're probably going to be putting a lime plaster over it. Lime works really well with clay, by the way. But I think clay is really important for us to have that layer next to our straw bale wall for that protection.
And because of these subsequent layers, the clay slip, the clay plaster, the lime plaster, having all these layers, that could really add a lot of longevity to these walls. So yesterday I was working hard, and man, I got a lot done out here. I almost got the north side of this wall finished up. We're looking really good. And I just got a little bit more to do over here. I guess it's not maybe a little bit. It's still a decent amount, but very exciting. It's really getting down to it. So if you noticed yesterday, I was working with my hands. Put the tool down, started working with the hands, and for me, I felt like it just went a little faster. People had suggested after watching the last video, maybe I should try a trowel. And it was fairly nice to work with. I think it works better on the flat surfaces, and maybe not so much for this coat, because with this one, I really got to kind of work it into the bales. And so I'm using that tool, and I'm really kind of smashing that mud into the bales. And by the end of that day, man, my shoulder and my arm were really tired. Not saying that doing it by hand is a cakewalk. It's still decent work, but a lot less strenuous than using the tool. So I think at least for this layer, doing it by hand makes sense because that gets it into the straw a little bit better. And then maybe subsequent layers, maybe the trowel will be a nice tool to add to the mix. You can't skip the first layer. It's a very important layer. There are definitely different ways about handling the slip coat, but I ended up doing it by hand. So when I made my mix, I tried to keep it thin. You want to keep it fairly thin so that it can get and work it into the straw. But since I was doing it by hand, I tried to make it just thick enough where I could kind of scoop it up with my hand and really get it in place.
I've seen people dunk the bales into their mud water, probably pretty messy, and then, do it as you're putting the bales up and as you're building it.
And that wouldn't be a bad technique either, like if you can do it, because that'll help the bales stick together a bit more.
Some people spray it on the sprayer.
And I was going to do that too. I think that would be a very effective method. I would need to have screened ours a little more thoroughly if I wanted to do that. But I think that could be a very effective method. This is always a kind of a challenging time of year for you. Just when it gets to the winter time, when it gets into these colder months, December, January, February, it's always kind of a little bit of struggle. The days start to get real short. We're about a couple of weeks out from the shortest day of the year. And with the lack of sunlight and the lack of heat, it causes you some issues. Kind of wondering what you were doing, but you're just making your cob mixes over here, huh?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of straw right on the ground.
So I don't have any diagnosis, but the closest thing that I've found that might be going on with me is fibromyalgia.
Treating that wheelbarrow like it owes you money.
I have this all the time on a mild level, but it gets worse in the winter, and I feel a lot of fatigue and pain. So it's been a little bit of a struggle getting work done.
Yeah, I mean, you might have noticed she wasn't in the last video a whole lot. In this video, not a ton. You are making it out here, and you're getting, I think, a tremendous amount done despite all the challenges. But yeah, you constantly dealing with headaches, muscle aches. It's definitely a challenge. No one's going to be able to see this, but trust me, whatever she's doing back there is incredibly impressive. Yeah, that is really coming along real nicely. Attaching those bales to the dome like that. It's a really nice, good seal. Fantastic job with that.
Staying active does help. I don't want to overdo it, but if I just sit around all day, I just feel horrible then. So
that's the trick. It's kind of a balance. You definitely got to get out there. You got to soak up that sun. You got to keep moving. Of course, doing too much, can aggravate things. But it's just striking that right balance of not being sheltered up on the inside, wrapped in a blanket. Yeah. But so yeah, definitely a little bit of challenge that you always got to do during the colder months. But you're doing it. You're getting it done. Yeah, I'm pleased with the amount of progress that I've made. I've really been enjoying the process of applying the clay slip. It's been fun for me. a lot of work, but that's the thing about straw bales is like the walls go up pretty quick, but it does take time afterwards to really get those subsequent layers on and make sure everything's really well protected. So obviously we still have a ways to go to get these walls nice and in shape, but I'm really excited about the progress, and I'm just going to keep going and make sure we're getting this thing buttoned up. I know you're working through your seasonal issues, but you are knocking it out as well. So I'm really excited. So definitely give this video a thumbs up for clay and clay slips, and we'll catch you in the next video, y'all.